Hello and welcome back to a series of lectures on herbal medicine. Today we'll talk about an important plant, Dioscorea deltoidea, which has been discovered in Indian subcontinent as an important source of the anti-arthritis drugs. Historically, this plant was used for the washing purposes, wherein the rhizomatous portion of this was used for the manufacture of a soap, which was used for washing the cotton as well as fibrous materials. It has been reported that the tribals who tended to use the rhizomatous portions for washing purposes accidentally discovered its medicinal properties, and while washing it was seen that those people who were suffering from the joint ailments or having some muscle problems, once using this rhizomatous portion as a source of a soapy material, they would find that the pain or the muscle problems would get relaxed within a short span of time. That discovery remained traditional or tribal for a prolonged duration. However, once that property was reported to the modern medical practitioners, they tried to analyze as to what is the source of this medicinal remedy and what type of the component is commercially useful for the manufacture of a drug or a medicine. That discovery in turn revealed that the rhizomatous portions contain in them certain important alkaloid, that is diosgenine, which is a basic source for the synthesis of cortisone. This cortisone is one of the fundamental sources for the manufacture of the arthritic, anti-arthritic as well as anti-asthmatic drugs. Now, this discovery in turn has facilitated to use this plant not only for overcoming whatever ailments one is suffering from about the joint problems, skin problems or other traveling problems, but at present the concept is to see if after extraction the alkaloid can in turn be used for the manufacture of some important and useful medicine for overcoming the treatment or overcoming the ailments one is suffering from. Now, in general, this Dioscorea deltoidea, popularly known as crunch, is distributed in the northwest Himalayas from Kashmir to Nepal and usually adapts to temperate conditions from an altitude of about 1500 to 3200 meters above sea level. And it has also been seen that wherever it grows, it has a preference for partially sunny and partially shady conditions. That in turn reflects its adaptability to high slopes, wherein the natural trees or natural habitats of the forest in turn can create the shady conditions for its survival. Now, in general, in the natural habitats, this plant has a potential to survive for about 10 to 25 years, wherein the rhizomatous portion enlarges with every passing year in its size, and at the end of every growing season, the above ground portions dry up, and in the next season, new vegetative portions are developing, which in turn also enter the reproductive cycle. Now, in nature, this reproductive cycle also facilitates its propagation through the production of the seeds, which on their own, once getting dispersed, can give rise to seedlings, but those seedlings in the natural habitats take about 10 to 15 years to attain a commercial potential. Those who wanted to domesticate it, they tried to analyze both methods, that is using the seeds, that is sexual propagation, and using the rhizome, that is the vegetative propagation, to see which one of them can facilitate in commercialization of this plant crunch for trade or for the domestication. If we use seeds, here two important steps are to be taken. One, the collection of the seeds, at which stage one can harvest them, for how long one can store them, and under which conditions one can sow them so that they will give rise to a healthy seedling. In natural habitats, these seeds are shed usually in the months of September, wherein the fruits split open on their own, and after splitting, the seeds get dispersed naturally, fall down on productive soils and give rise to seedlings in the next growing season. But under controlled conditions, that is where it is domesticated or where it is commercially cultivated, these seeds are to be harvested in the months of September or October, depending upon the maturity of the fruits. After harvesting, these are to be stored under controlled conditions for about 6 to 9 months, depending upon the conditions in which we want to store them. If the temperature is higher, that is more than 10 degrees Celsius, it can be stored for only about 6 months. But if the temperature is lower than 10, that is about 5 degrees Celsius, one can store these seeds for about 9 months also. And after storing them, these seeds are first to be soaked in water for some time, usually for about 1 or 2 hours, so that their seed coat or the wall becomes slightly softened up. After softening, these are to be widespread manually in the seed beds and covered thinly with either the manure, or sometimes if the need arises, can be covered with the sandy textured soil. And again, here one must try to irrigate the seeds immediately after being sown. Usually, under controlled conditions, these seeds give rise to a healthy seedling in about 1 month to about 45 days. But under natural habitats, it has sometimes been seen to take about 3 to 4 months to give rise to a healthy seedling, primarily because once the seeds are shut down from the tree, it immediately is facing the extremely cold winter conditions, which are not suitable for the seeds to give rise to a healthy seedling. Under ex situ conditions, once we sow them, it is necessary to monitor the development of the seedlings and monitor the irrigation patterns, so that once the beds in which we have sown these seeds never are extremely dry, and once the need arises, one is able to irrigate, but the quantity of the irrigation should not be much than what is required. And one should always monitor that the water does not actually submerge the seedlings in the bed in which we have planted them. After attaining a height of about 10 to 15 centimeters, these seedlings are transplanted in the main bed, but here one must not show the seedlings individually. Unlike in all other plants, one must try to sow seedlings in groups, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes even 5 seedlings ought to be sown together, so that each seedling in turn is able to provide support to other seedling for its developmental pattern. Generally, these plants are weaker in terms of their above ground texture, and they need supportive structures in the ex situ conditions, whereas in nature they are trying to use available shrubs, bushes or trees to grow on them. They are climbing type of plants. They try to swive around the plants, and that in turn helps them to grow as tall as the tree or the supportive structure can be. Under ex situ conditions, one has to create or one has to support each seedling, so that that seedling is able to grow on that and give rise to a healthy plant which can attain productive status within a span of about 7 to 8 years. That is wherein the rhizome is useful for not only extraction but also useful for the vegetative propagation. Every year one may also see that this seedling may enter a reproductive cycle. That is, it may again produce flowers, it may again produce seeds. One must harvest these seeds and then try to store them, try to use them for commercialization, but never in those early stages try to harvest the rhizomatous portion, because if harvested at a younger stage, the quality as well as the quantity of the production is getting negatively affected. If we now look at the vegetative means of propagation, in that case one must try to harvest the rhizomatous portions usually at a stage once the above ground portion have shown complete senescence. That is, where above ground portion or above ground vegetative portion is completely dry, where its color is changing from greenness to complete yellowness and the texture is becoming harder. At this stage, one must cut the above ground portions, dig out the underground portions, try to wash it, and at that stage, after washing, try to locate where larger number of vegetative buds or the apical shoot apices of the rhizome are seen. Usually, one can split the rhizome into a large number of segments on the basis of the availability of the meristem. However, one should also take care of the fact that a partial portion can be used for extraction of the active principle and a partial portion can be used for the cultivation or commercialization of its cultivation. At this stage, one must also try to immediately assess which part of the rhizome is useful for extraction on the basis of its size and which part on the basis of its size is useful for the domestication as well as vegetative propagation. Generally, the part that is used for commercialization, that is for extraction of the active principle, that should be kept kept in a separate container, while as those which are used for the propagation, they should be again split into smaller fragments, with each fragment having an apical bud or a vegetative bud immediately transplanted into a nursery, where the distance between each vegetative propagule should be about 12 inches and distance between the rows of these propagules should be about 15 inches. And this bud or this rhizomatous portion is also to be monitored regularly till first signs of the emergence of the vegetative part, that is the above ground portion, is seen. However, it has been seen that during winter, not even a single vegetative apex or the vegetative bud is showing to emerge from the beds in which these are sown. That is primarily because the winter is very cold, conditions are not suitable for the vegetative development and thereby affecting the vegetative development of the rhizomatous portion that has been sown for the vegetative propagation. In the months of March onwards, once the temperature is above 10 degrees Celsius, it has been seen that the first emergence of these vegetative buds starts, and which in turn gives rise to a healthy plantlet, and that plantlet by the September or by October can in turn attain a reproductive status. However, one must not get confused as to this plant attaining a mature stage for harvesting. No, the first reproductive cycle is reflecting that this rhizomatous portion has adapted to the new habitat and it is now able to survive on its own, that is independently in the transplant conditions. At the end of this season also, one must only harvest the above ground portions as well as seeds, try to store the seeds, throw away the other foliar parts as well as vegetative branchlets, and then try to use these seeds for the sexual propagation. Now, this rhizome is to be monitored for about 2 to 3 years to see whether its productive potential is improving with every passing year. Now, here the difference is seen by the number of branchlets or number of above ground portions that are produced every year. In the first year, the rhizome may produce only one above ground portion, that is one branchlet. But in the second year, the number may be higher, sometimes 2, sometimes more than 2. In the third year, it may be much higher. In the fourth year, it may be much higher. The higher the number of branchlets that are being produced every year, in turn reflects that the rhizome is now attaining a potential to not only adapt to the habitat, but also attains a potential to be harvested for the extraction of the active principle. Now, once this vegetatively propagated individual or sexually propagated individual attains maturity, one must try to see what methods of harvesting one must use so that the quality as well as quantity of the plant as well as its product does not get affected. Usually, one must first clean the above ground portion of the plant itself, and then after cleaning it, one must try to deweed the bed in which we are cultivating this plant commercially, so that the deweeding in turn reflects exactly the location of the rhizomatous portion, and that location in turn will help us to dig it out without affecting the adhering rhizomes or adhering rootlets of this. Generally, the digging is to be carried out to a depth of about 15 to sometimes even 20 inches, because it has been seen with every passing year the rhizomatous portion is able to submerge much deeper in the soil in which we grow it. By digging it out, by bringing out these rhizomatous portions, we are trying to dig the soil, which in turn is helping out to see what the status of the soil of the habitat is. Generally, one must try to analyze the soil texture, soil organic matter, as well as the soil quantity to see whether one has to alter this habitat for the regrowth or replantation of the Dioscoreas. Now, after harvesting, one must first try to wash them, so that that washing is able to help us to identify which portions are suitable for extraction of the active component and which portion are suitable for the multiplication vegetatively. Now, generally, if we are trying to extract the active principle, that is diosgenine, immediately, one must try to see what part is to be traded and what the method of trade towards that pharmaceutical company should be. In general, one must try to store them in those containers which are airtight, because it has been seen that evaporation of the active principle can take place if the container is not airtight. However, if we want to store it for longer duration, that is, the active principle extraction is to be carried out after, say, 5 months, sometimes even after 1 year, in that case, it is to be dried under controlled conditions where evaporation is not at a higher speed, so that that evaporation does not in any way affect the quality as well as the quantity of the active principle. In general, it has been seen that preference should be given to immediate extraction of the active principle, so that its quality as well as quantity does not get affected under the storage. However, in the Kashmir Himalayas, the concept of its usage is slightly different. The local tribals, especially Gujar and Bakarwals, what they do is, after harvesting, they try to dry it up in shady conditions, and after drying it up, they try to store it for prolonged durations in rubber bags. And in those rubber bags, it has been seen that its quality does not get affected, and after storing it for desired durations, they bring it out, crush it into powders and boil that powder in normal water and use that water externally to wash those parts of the body which are suffering from rheumatic arthritis, or try to inhale the fumes which are used for the overcoming of the asthmas. Now, this concept may seem different from what the modern concept is, yet the effect of this method has been seen almost the same as we see in the present day or modern systems of medicine. However, it has been seen that if the traditional consumption pattern, traditional usage is faster or in larger quantities, that sometimes is seen to affect the respiratory tract and sometimes even in the inhaling properties of those humans who try to consume it in larger quantities. Further, if the consumption is in terms of the fumes or the smoke of the ashes, it has been seen that that ash sometimes can also cause acute chest infections if consumed in larger quantities, as is recommended even under the modern systems of medicine. Now, once the drug has been properly extracted, that is, diosgenine has been harvested, its concentration has again been seen variable. In natural habitats, that is, where the plant is growing in the vicinity of conifers, in temperate areas and sometimes even in subalpine areas, its quantity has been seen to be as high as 4.8 to about 5.6%, which is commercially useful. But if this plant is grown at lower altitudes, away from conifers, its concentration has been seen to reduce to about 2.9 to only 3.5%. That means a major change in active principle concentration is affected by the variability in its habitat, thereby reflecting perhaps the vicinity of conifers may be a positive factor in not only facilitating the plant's survival, but also improving the quality as well as quantity of the active principle in the rhizomatous portions. Under ex situ conditions, different methods have been seen to now improve the active principle concentrations. It has been seen that if excessive quantities of cow dung manure is added regularly during the vegetative phase, that is important. Vegetative phase, that is once the inflorescence has not started to develop, if we add the organic matter, cow dung manure to the beds in which we cultivate it under ex situ conditions, that has been seen to modify its active principle concentration to about 3.7% even under controlled conditions. Yet, if we compare that with natural habitats, it may be lower, but to modify it by using cow dung manure or farmyard manure, that has been seen to improve the quality of the product. Further, it has been seen that if after harvesting we try to wash it with fresh water, that fresh water does not in any way negate the quality of the rhizomatous portion or the active principle that is a part of it. If by accident or by desire some uses polluted water, some use the water of a drainage to wash the rhizomatous portion, it has been seen that that in turn also negatively affects not only the quality, but sometimes even the quantity of the active principle in the rhizomatous portion, which in turn can be harmful to those which can use it as a remedial measure. Now, at present, the method of use has also been standardized. If we look at the modern system of medicine, the use of it for the treatment of asthma is in the form of the syrups or sometimes even in the form of tablets. However, in the traditional way, it is used in the form of the smoke by boiling or sometimes even burning the ashes of the roots. More importantly, the treatment for arthritis is recommended in both traditional as well as the modern system of medicines by using the extract of the rhizomatous, fresh rhizomatous portions to apply on those parts of the bodies which are suffering from rheumatic arthritis, and try to keep them exposed till the solution that has been used is completely dry, so that it does not actually get dried up by using artificial means, that is trying to wipe it off with the help of a cloth or with the help of any other material. And it has been seen that this treatment has been positively affecting or improving the treatments of all those patients who are suffering from the arthritis. At present, a unique discovery has been made, especially in the modern system of medicines, wherein the extract of the rhizomatous portions, that is cortisone, is used for treatment of genetic disorders. Generally speaking, once we talk about treatment of genetic disorders, it is considered to be one of the most recent or modern discovery. But on the basis of this discovery, it has revealed that perhaps the ancient people or traditional people could have been trying to use it as a remedy or as a contraceptive, for which it at present is used in the modern system of medicine also. In that case, the extract of the fresh rhizomes has been seen to act as an important contraceptive, and wherein its usage is recommended after analyzing the health of the consumer. It has been seen that if the consumer is suffering from the cardiac ailments or respiratory ailments, for him the recommendation is that he should not use this cortisone for overcoming the contraceptive problems. But if he is not suffering from any such problems, in that case one must try to use it as a contraceptive. However, prior to the usage, one must always recommend the consultation of the registered medical practitioners. Now, it means that the discoveries that are being made, the domestications that are being carried out, commercialization that are being carried out, are gradually helping us to use natural resources for not only commercialization but also educate those people who are living in the areas in which these plants grow, to not only protect them but also try to earn something out of their trade or out of their domestication, which in turn will result in the commercialization of those plants which are up till present or up to the past decade have been only rated as the wild plants growing in the natural habitats. Now, in Kashmir Himalayas, Dioscorea deltoidea about 10 years back was a very common plant. It was seen almost everywhere in the coniferous forests, but once we assess its status at present, it is now rated as vulnerable. Vulnerable means that during the last 10 years, whatever the quantity of the population in the natural habitats was, that has been reduced by about 25%. That means if in nature about 100 plants were available about 10 years back, at present we will only find about 75 plants in that habitat. That in turn necessitates the commercialization at a speed at which one will first develop conservation as well as a method wherein the natural habitats or natural populations are not in any way getting negatively affected, which will help us to maintain this wealth for as long as we want. For this, two important parameters have been analyzed. These are, number one, to identify the habitat which is suitable for its domestication. For this, the guidelines of the CMAP are that the plant prefers light, sandy conditions, medium, loamy soils, heavy clay soils, and requires soils which are well drained. And the plant also prefers acid, neutral or basic alkaline soils, and which in turn is also in need of providing it semi-shade, that is light woodland condition, or sometimes even no shade also, but if grown at low altitudes. Now, these guidelines, if followed, will help those who try to commercialize it to not only make their survival possible at low altitudes, but also help in commercializing its cultivation as well as its trade. Second important component is that if the roots of this plant, that is the commercially important part, is to be stored for longer duration, one must try to use fungicides and pesticides so that these fungi or these pests are not trying to destroy the stored material under storage conditions, which will in turn affect not only the rhizomatous portion or the root portion, but also may affect negatively the active principle also. The recent studies have revealed that if affected or infected by the diseases, the roots active principle concentration is getting deleted or depleted by about 2% by these pests and fungi. That means one must take proper care of the storage as well as storage techniques so that whatever has been harvested is stored properly and then used for the commercial trade. Those of you who want to domesticate this plant, commercialize this plant, should follow the selected parameters so that its cultivation, its domestication as well as its commercialization is useful not only to those who do it, but also useful to the plant itself so that it is able to survive. I hope those of you who will follow this procedure will be able to commercialize its domestication and trade in a short span of time.